To discuss live, Republican Senator Marco Rubio from Florida. He's the ranking Republican on the Senate Intelligence Committee. He also serves on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, good to see you. So I want to get your reaction to this news that has just broken in the last hour or so. The Kremlin is claiming that the leaders of the key separatist movements in eastern Ukraine, in the Donbass region, are asking Putin for help fighting the Ukrainians. What's your reaction? How much do you fear this will escalate the situation?
Well, that's kind of the final step in this process, and that now opens the door for Putin to trigger his fake mutual defense agreement that he signed with them. And I think we're now hours, not days away from it. In fact, I think some of it's already underway. Obviously, I'll let others confirm it that are on the ground. I'll let the Pentagon confirm some of this. But there's a lot of activity going on at the same time in Ukraine tonight. All the signs point to something unusual happening compared to other days. Obviously, we'll see, and I'll let others confirm it that are closer to it than what I'm seeing come across. But, we're in the middle of something right now here tonight that's a little bit different than previous nights.
Sources tell CNN that the U.S. has issued this new warning to the Ukrainian government and to NATO that the latest U.S. intelligence suggests not just a Russian incursion into the Donbass region, which would be bad enough, but a full-scale Russian invasion, and that it's imminent. You're the ranking Republican on the Intelligence Committee, and I know you can't disclose classified information, but do you agree?
Yeah, I think Putin made a decision. Look, I've long believed that he was going to conduct this attack for a lot of reasons. We don't have time to go into all of it. It would take about 30 minutes to walk through it. But the bottom line is that all the boxes he would check in this plan, he's been checking them. I felt like we knew. I can say this, though. We've known for some days now that he's made it what's pretty much an irreversible decision at this point. And so I think you saw with the cyber attacks today, the implanting of malware in key systems. I think the next thing you would probably see them do is potentially try to seize a couple airports so that they can fly equipment directly into the country. I think you could also see them begin to target air defense systems, weapon and ammo depots, and things of that nature. This will move pretty quickly once it starts, and we're going to lose some insight into it from the perspective of the media. I think you're going to see disruptions in social media, telecommunications, internet connectivity, things of that nature.
You just said that Putin made the decision to set in motion an irreversible process. You tweeted this also a few days ago. So do you think the window is closed to resolve this diplomatically, and thus are you anticipating that most, if not all, of Ukraine will soon enough be under Russian control?
Well, I don't think the diplomatic window was ever open, because he made demands that he knew could not be met. He made unreasonable demands. He made demands that he knew the West could never agree to. In essence, if you read what his demands were, he was asking us to kick out at least 13 NATO countries, basically anyone who's joined after 2007. And that he knew that wasn't possible. So I don't think there ever was a window. I think, frankly, Putin's been planning this. It didn't start last month or last week. This has been going on for over a year. And I just felt he felt like this was the opportune time. They got elections in France. The U.S. has got its own issues domestically and focused on China. Energy prices are high. Germany has a new leader. The U.K. is going through some tumult in their political process. And I think he felt like this was the ideal moment to sort of take action. If he didn't do it now, the window could potentially close a year from now, and it may not be there for him.
So you say you don't think sanctions will stop Putin. If not sanctions, then what? I mean, the United States is not going to put U.S. or NATO forces on the ground in Ukraine. So how does the West stop Putin, or is it too late?
Well, I don't mean to sound defeatist about this, but the bottom line is if Russia has the military ability to take Ukraine, if it wants to take it, its problem is not going to be that. Its problem is going to be now it has to govern it. Now it has to stay there. The Ukrainians, there's a reason why you don't see millions of Ukrainians abandoning their cities and families. They're going to stay, and they're going to fight. And they're not just going to fight now. They're going to fight after the big invasion's over while these guys are occupying. This is, I think if any nation on earth has learned how expensive and difficult it is to occupy a country that has a large number of people that may not want you there, especially long term, it's us. We know, we've seen that in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the Russians saw it in Afghanistan too. And obviously before that we saw it in Vietnam. So they have a real challenge on their hands moving forward. This is not going to be, a little Crimea situation where they just occupy a place after a fist fight at a police station. I mean, this is going to be a long-term deal. He may very well occupy large portions of the country, but he's not going to pacify it. The Ukrainians are going to fight him for a long time, and there's going to be a lot of dead Russians going home, and he'll have to explain to their moms why they died to occupy a place that didn't want him.
So what do you think NATO should do? What do you think President Biden should do?
Well, I think these sanctions should have been imposed. Frankly, I wish we would have imposed the strongest possible sanctions, which was on the two biggest Russian banks. I wish we would have imposed those in the middle of Putin's speech, which, by the way, was taped. It wasn't live, but right in the middle of that speech, we should have imposed it. We already knew what he was going to do. I'm not a big believer in this sanction as we go, process. Beyond it, I think that they're making the right decisions about reinforcing NATO's eastern flank. I think that's an important commitment because that is indeed an official red line. I mean, and that's something that cannot be crossed. At the same time, I think it's incredibly important that the U.S. return to a policy of producing domestic energy at a higher level than we've been doing. And fortunately, the Biden administration's cut back on. It is these high energy prices, as much as anything else, that has given Putin not just tremendous leverage over Europe, but tremendous leverage over the whole situation. It's actually been of great value to him, and it's actually made us potentially vulnerable. So I hope we will return to that. And I hope we won't lose focus on the Indo-Pacific region, which is where the critical threats to the 21st century lie. And I believe that our NATO alliance, with a little bit more contribution from the U.S. in terms of a forward presence, can hold back the threat of a further expansion in Europe. And I would say this, we should recognize the Ukrainian government, even if it happens to be in exile or in some rump portion of the country, and we should help them. We should help them to help those insurgents that remain behind the lines who are going to continue to fight Russia for months and years to come until their country is free. These are tough people. They will fight, and we should do everything we can to help them. And they're not asking for American soldiers. They're just asking for the weapons to fight for themselves and their families.
Earlier, our correspondent Sam Kiley reported on how this invasion affects real people in eastern Ukraine and beyond, civilians living in fear, praying the next shell doesn't land on their home. What do you think the United States owes to these people, to these innocent Ukrainians?
Look, these are heartbreaking scenes that we're seeing. And obviously, the United States is the most powerful country in the world. It is not all powerful. And that even in the peak of the unipolar world, we were not all powerful. And there are things that we couldn't control. These are terrible things that are happening. And I wish we could do more to stop it and prevent it from happening. Unfortunately, evil people do evil things in this world, and they should pay a price for doing it so that it doesn't happen in other places. It is heartbreaking, these images. There are a lot of Russian speakers in eastern Ukraine that don't want to be a part of Russia, but they certainly don't want to be shelled, and they don't want their kids to be forced, conscripted into some fake country's army, which is these fake separatist areas that Russia's created. And it is heartbreaking. Jake, is one of the toughest things to tell you is that America can do a lot to help Ukraine. But ultimately, I think the future of Ukraine is in the hands of the Ukrainian people, who I think are prepared to fight and make this a really difficult and painful experience for Putin in the long term.
You've been very clear-eyed and sober in your conversations and your comments about what's going on. What's been your reaction when people in your party have praised Putin or said that this is all just Joe Biden trying to distract from his domestic agenda, et cetera? It's so different from the kinds of things you're saying.
Well, I heard a lot about the distract stuff a week ago from some people. I haven't heard a lot about that lately. It's clear this is real and this is happening. But I think we always owe an obligation to the people watching to explain, why does this matter to America? It's not that it isn't bad, it's a terrible thing, but why does this matter to Americans? And it matters for two reasons. The first is we now live in a world where countries can decide, hey, that belongs to us, we're going to go invade it and take it. I think the world's going to get really messy really fast, and that's going to impact us here. As far as Ukraine specifically is concerned, I think it has a big impact on a lot of things, on global energy prices. We already have very high gas and energy prices. They're going to go higher. Ukraine is a pretty substantial food producer in wheat and corn. That'll have an impact on the global food market, which ultimately would have an impact on us as well. They actually are the leading supplier of neon gas for our nascent semiconductor industry here in the United States. That's going to be cut off. So there are some impacts there. But I also think, as you saw today, I don't know if you saw it, there was this accidentally leaked guidance or directive that the Chinese government gave to its official state reporters. It was talking about why they needed to support Russia, because one day we'll need Russia's support when the time comes for us to deal with Taiwan. And so clearly the Chinese are watching this very carefully to sort of figure out what happens when you take a place that you claim belongs to you that doesn't want to be a part of you. And they're watching this to see what the price you pay is and what the U.S. reaction and our allied reaction is.
Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, the Vice Chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, thank you so much for being with us today. I appreciate it, sir. Sticking